If you ever hear your own voice coming through a radio when you're completely alone, leave immediately. I didn't, and that decision still haunts me. The voice that came through the speaker sounded exactly like mine. Same accent, same tone, same breathing, but the message it delivered made my blood run cold. Don't go below level 3, Ethan. I froze. My hands slipped from the radio controls. There was no possible way anyone should have known my name. I was alone in the middle of the New Mexico desert, nearly 60 miles from the nearest town. The facility I was working in had been abandoned for decades. At least, that's what I had been told. The transmission continued. You have less than 2 hours. Then the signal vanished. Only static remained. At the time, I thought someone was playing a prank. Looking back, I wish that had been the truth, because what I eventually discovered beneath Black Mesa was far worse than anything I could have imagined. My name is Ethan Mercer. In 2007, I worked as a communications technician based in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Most of my jobs involved repairing old radio systems and communication equipment in remote locations. The work paid well and usually came with one major benefit. I didn't have to deal with people. That was why I accepted the Black Mesa contract without asking too many questions. A private contractor contacted me about a decommissioned monitoring station located deep in the desert of northwestern New Mexico. The station had reportedly been part of a Cold War research project before being abandoned sometime during the 1980s. For the past several months, nearby communication networks had been receiving strange radio transmissions on inactive frequencies. The source couldn't be identified. Multiple specialists had already investigated the issue. None of them had managed to locate the origin of the signal. My assignment was simple. Stay at the facility for 1 week, track the transmission, determine where it was coming from. The pay was nearly triple my normal rate. That should have been a warning. Instead, I saw it as an opportunity. 2 days later, I packed my equipment into my truck and headed north. The drive took most of the day. As the hours passed, signs of civilization slowly disappeared. Gas stations became rare. Cell service vanished. Traffic faded until I was completely alone on the highway. The desert stretched endlessly in every direction. Red cliffs rose from the earth like ancient walls. The farther I traveled, the more isolated everything became. Shortly before sunset, I reached a locked security gate. A key had been left for me inside a small metal lockbox. Beyond the gate, a dirt road wound through miles of empty desert. I followed it for nearly 30 minutes before finally seeing the facility. The station stood at the base of Black Mesa. It looked forgotten by the world. 3 concrete buildings sat behind rusted fencing. A tall radio tower loomed above them. The entire place felt wrong. Not dangerous. Not yet. Just wrong. The air seemed unnaturally still. There were no birds, no insects, no animal sounds, only silence. I parked near the main building and stepped outside. The moment my boots touched the ground, a strange feeling settled over me. It felt as though someone was watching from a distance. I turned slowly, scanning the surrounding desert. Nothing. Just endless rock formations and fading sunlight. I convinced myself it was nerves. After all, I was about to spend a week alone in the middle of nowhere. Inside the main building, I found working electricity and surprisingly modern equipment. Someone had clearly maintained the site. That immediately confused me. According to the contractor, the facility had been abandoned for years. Yet everything looked recently serviced. Fresh wiring, clean floors, operational generators. It didn't make sense. I spent the next several hours unpacking equipment and inspecting the communication systems. Everything appeared normal, at least on the surface. Around 9 that evening, I discovered something unexpected. While examining old storage rooms, I found a reinforced steel door hidden behind a maintenance corridor. The door led underground. A faded sign beside it read, "Authorized personnel only, levels 1 through 5. I stared at the sign. The contractor had never mentioned underground levels. In fact, he had barely provided any information about the facility at all. The steel door was locked with an electronic keypad. No power appeared to be running to it. I made a note to ask about it later. Then I returned upstairs. Outside, darkness had completely swallowed the desert. Black Mesa stood against the night sky like a giant shadow. For some reason, I couldn't stop looking at it through the window. Something about the mesa felt unsettling, almost alive. I eventually dismissed the feeling and focused on my work. Just before midnight, I activated the primary receivers and began monitoring frequencies. For nearly 30 minutes, nothing happened. Then the static began. A low crackling sound emerged from one of the speakers. I adjusted the controls. The signal immediately strengthened. Static filled the room. Then, beneath the noise, I heard a voice. A human voice. Very faint, very distant. I leaned closer. The transmission grew clearer, and the moment I heard the first complete sentence, every hair on my body stood up, because the voice coming through the radio wasn't a stranger's. It was mine. For several seconds, I couldn't move. I just sat there staring at the speaker. The voice sounded identical to mine. Not similar, not close, identical. Every word carried the same tone and rhythm I had heard my entire life. The transmission crackled with static. Then my voice spoke again. Ethan, if you're hearing this, you still have time. The signal cut out. Silence filled the room. My first thought was that somebody had somehow recorded me. Maybe a practical joke. Maybe an old audio file. There had to be a logical explanation. There always was. I quickly checked every active frequency. Nothing. The signal had vanished. I rewound the recording software connected to my equipment and played the transmission back. The voice sounded even worse the second time. Hearing your own voice speak words you've never said creates a feeling that's hard to describe. It felt wrong on a level my brain couldn't process. Like looking into a mirror and seeing the reflection move before you do. I listened again, and again. The message never changed. Ethan, if you're hearing this, you still have time. Around 1 in the morning, the signal returned. This time the speaker erupted with violent bursts of static. The sound was so loud I nearly jumped from my chair. Then my voice came through once more, much clearer than before. Do not go underground. I froze. The transmission continued. Whatever they told you is a lie. The signal suddenly distorted. For a moment, another sound appeared beneath the words. Heavy breathing. Dozens of breaths. Maybe hundreds. Then everything disappeared again. I sat motionless. The underground levels. The hidden steel door. The strange maintenance records. Pieces of a puzzle were beginning to form, but none of them made sense. Eventually exhaustion caught up with me. At nearly 3 in the morning, I shut down most of the equipment and headed to the small bedroom. Sleep came slowly. The wind outside had started rising. The building groaned occasionally as gusts struck the concrete walls. I kept replaying the transmission in my mind. My own voice warning me, telling me not to go underground. At some point one finally fell asleep. Then came the dream. At least, I thought it was a dream. I was standing in a narrow concrete hallway. Red emergency lights flashed overhead. Somewhere nearby, people were screaming. Not one person, many people. The screams echoed through the darkness. I began walking toward them. The hallway stretched endlessly ahead. Every door I passed had numbers painted on it. Level 1, Level 2, Level 3. The farther I walked, the louder the screams became. Then I noticed something strange. The walls were covered with handprints, thousands of them. Some looked old, others appeared fresh, as if people had desperately pressed their hands against the concrete while trying to escape. A voice suddenly whispered beside my ear, "Don't let it hear you." I spun around. Nobody was there. The hallway lights flickered. The screaming stopped. Absolute silence replaced it. Then a sound emerged from the darkness ahead. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Approaching. Something was walking toward me. I couldn't see it, but I knew it was there. The footsteps grew louder. Closer. Closer. Then I woke up. My eyes snapped open. For several seconds, I didn't know where I was. The room was dark. My heart pounded against my chest. Then I heard it. A sound coming from somewhere inside the building. Footsteps. The exact same footsteps from the dream. Slow. Heavy. Moving through the hallway outside my room. I sat upright. The footsteps continued. Thump. 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 Each step seemed deliberate. Almost careful. Like whoever was walking didn't want to be heard. I grabbed a flashlight from the nightstand. The footsteps stopped immediately. Silence returned. I listened. Nothing. Not a single sound. After several minutes, I finally convinced myself that the noise had been part of the dream. Maybe the old building had settled during the night. Maybe exhaustion was affecting my judgment. Eventually dawn arrived. Sunlight filled the desert. The fear from the night slowly faded. Everything looked normal again. Ridiculously normal. I spent the morning inspecting antennas around the property. While working near the rear fence, I noticed something unusual. Tracks. Fresh tracks. Human tracks. They emerged from the desert and led toward the facility. At first I felt relieved. Maybe another worker had visited recently. Then I noticed something disturbing. The footprints only went one direction. Toward the station. None led away. I followed them carefully. The trail ended near the rear building. A structure that appeared completely unused. The door was locked. The windows had been painted black from the inside. I walked around the building twice. No other entrances existed. No vehicles were nearby. No signs of recent activity. Yet someone had clearly walked there, and apparently never left. That afternoon, I contacted the contractor using a satellite phone. I asked about the underground levels. The line became quiet. Too quiet. Finally the man answered, "You won't need access down there." His response immediately irritated me. "What is down there?" I asked. Another pause. Then he replied, "Old infrastructure." That's it. That's it. The conversation ended seconds later. Something about his tone bothered me. He sounded nervous, as if he wanted the discussion to end as quickly as possible. That evening I returned to the main building. While organizing equipment, I discovered a locked filing cabinet hidden beneath a workbench. The lock had already been damaged. Someone had forced it open long ago. Inside were dozens of old documents. Most were heavily redacted. Entire pages had been blacked out, but one file remained partially readable. Across the front was printed, "Black Mesa Acoustic Observation Program. Date, October 12, 1983. Below that was a sentence that made my stomach tighten. "Subject activity detected beneath level 5. I read the line 3 times. Then I heard the radio turn on by itself behind me. Static filled the room, and my voice spoke again. Only this time it sounded terrified. "Run." The word echoed through the room. "Run." For a moment, I simply stared at the radio. The transmission had sounded different this time. The earlier messages had been calm, controlled. This one sounded terrified, as if whoever was speaking had just seen something horrible. I rushed toward the receiver and adjusted the controls. Static filled the speaker. Then the signal returned. My voice came through again, breathing heavily, almost gasping. "It's awake." The transmission ended. A second later, every light inside the building went out. Darkness swallowed the room. I stood frozen. The only illumination came from the fading orange glow outside the windows. The sun had nearly disappeared behind Black Mesa. I grabbed my flashlight and swept the beam across the room. Nothing seemed out of place. The generators should have kept power running. There was no reason for a blackout. I checked my watch. 6:47 p.m. Night was approaching fast. I headed outside to inspect the generator building. The desert felt different now. The silence was heavier, more oppressive. The wind had completely stopped. Even the air felt strange. As I crossed the yard between buildings, I noticed something near the radio tower. At first I thought it was a person, a dark shape standing motionless beside the tower. I raised my flashlight. The figure was gone. My pulse quickened. I told myself it was a shadow, nothing more. Still, I found myself walking faster. The generator building was located near the rear fence. When I reached it, I immediately saw the problem. The main breaker had been switched off manually. Not damaged, not malfunctioning. Switched off. Someone had physically moved the lever. I stared at it for several seconds. There was no one else supposed to be there. Yet somebody had clearly touched the equipment. I turned the breaker back on. A few moments later, lights returned across the facility. Relief washed over me. Then I noticed something scratched into the dusty wall beside the breaker panel. The words looked recent. Very recent. The dust around them had barely settled. "Do not open level 5. I stepped back. My flashlight trembled slightly in my hand. The message wasn't part of the original structure. Someone had written it recently. Very recently. I suddenly remembered the footprints, the locked building, the strange files, the mysterious radio transmissions. Every answer seemed connected to whatever existed underground. As darkness settled across the desert, I returned to the main building and locked every door. For the first time since arriving, I felt genuinely uneasy. Around 9 o'clock, I resumed monitoring the radio frequencies. Nothing happened for nearly 2 hours. Then, at exactly 11:11 p.m., the signal returned. This time it wasn't my voice. It was someone else's. A woman. Her voice sounded weak, exhausted, as though she had been crying for a very long time. "Please answer." The words emerged through layers of static. "Please, anyone." I immediately grabbed the microphone. "This is Ethan Mercer. Who is this?" For several seconds there was silence. Then the woman answered. "Oh God." She sounded relieved, almost shocked. "You can hear me?" "Yes," I said. "Who are you?" The response came slowly. "My name is Lavra. What happened to you?" A long pause followed. Then she spoke for words that made my stomach drop. "I can't get out." Static crackled through the speaker. "Where are you?" I asked. The answer arrived immediately. "Below you." A chill spread through my body. I glanced toward the hallway leading to the underground access door. "No," I said. "That's impossible." The woman laughed softly. It wasn't a normal laugh. It sounded hopeless. "You'll understand soon." The signal distorted. For a moment her voice became garbled. Then another voice appeared beneath hers. A man's voice. Then another. Then another. Dozens of voices speaking at once. The radio erupted into chaos. People crying. People shouting. People begging. The sound lasted only a few seconds before cutting off completely. Silence returned. I sat there staring at the receiver. Every rational explanation was beginning to collapse. Around midnight, I made a decision. I needed answers. And the answers were underground. The electronic lock on the steel access door had no power running to it. But after examining the control panel, I discovered someone had bypassed the system years earlier. A hidden manual release mechanism sat behind a maintenance cover. It looked old, worn from repeated use. Someone had been opening the door. I pulled the release lever. A loud metallic clunk echoed through the corridor. The lock disengaged. The heavy door slowly creaked open. Cold air rushed out immediately. The temperature difference was shocking. It felt as though the underground levels were refrigerated. A concrete staircase descended into darkness. My flashlight beam disappeared into the depths. I stood there for nearly a minute. Every instinct told me to stop, to leave, to drive away and never return. Then I remembered the voice on the radio. Lavra, the people crying, the files mentioning activity beneath level 5. I switched on my flashlight and started down the stairs. The door slammed shut behind me. The sound echoed through the darkness like a gunshot. I spun around instantly. The door wasn't moving anymore. It had simply closed on its own. My heart raced, but there was no turning back now. The staircase seemed endless. The deeper I went, the colder the air became. Eventually, I reached the first underground level. Rows of abandoned offices stretched into darkness. Dust covered everything. Old computers sat untouched on desks. Papers littered the floor. It looked as though people had left in a hurry. I continued downward. Level 2 was similar. Empty corridors, storage rooms, equipment long since abandoned. Level 3 felt different. The walls changed. The concrete became thicker, heavier. Large steel doors lined the hallways. Many carried warning signs that had faded with age. One of the doors stood slightly open. I approached carefully. Inside was a small observation room. A thick glass window overlooked another chamber. The room beyond was empty, but something written on the glass caught my attention. The message had been scratched into the surface from the inside, not outside. Inside, 3 words. IT hears everything. As I stared at the message, a sound echoed somewhere deeper below. A metallic bang, then another, then another. Something was moving beneath level 3, and it was getting closer. The metallic banging continued from somewhere below. Each impact echoed through the underground structure. I stood completely still, listening. Bang. A few seconds of silence. Bang. The sound felt distant, yet powerful enough to vibrate faintly through the floor beneath my boots. Something down there was moving, and it was moving with purpose. I forced myself to continue. The staircase leading to level 4 was hidden behind another reinforced security door. Unlike the upper levels, this one was already open. The metal around the lock appeared twisted, as though someone had forced their way through, or forced their way out. The air grew colder as I descended. My flashlight beam revealed more signs of abandonment. Papers scattered across hallways, broken equipment, emergency lights hanging from ceilings. Then I noticed something strange. There was no dust. Not here. The upper levels had been untouched for years. Level 4 looked recently used. Fresh footprints covered the concrete floor. Some were large, some were small. There were dozens of them. I crouched to examine them. The tracks moved in different directions. Some headed deeper into the level. Others appeared to be running toward the stairs, as if people had fled from something. My pulse quickened. I followed the footprints through a long corridor. The hallway eventually opened into a large operations room. Rows of computer terminals filled the chamber. Most were dead. A few still displayed dim green lights. Against all logic, part of the facility still had power. I approached one of the active terminals. The screen displayed thousands of lines of archived reports. Most files were corrupted. Others were locked behind passwords. One document remained accessible. I opened it. The date immediately caught my attention. June 14, 1985. The report contained a single paragraph. Subject demonstrates advanced mimicry abilities. Audio replication now exceeds 99% accuracy. Personnel are advised to ignore familiar voices. The subject has begun using identities of deceased staff members. I read the paragraph twice, then a third time. Mimicry. Audio replication. Familiar voices. My own voice over the radio suddenly made far more sense. Whatever existed below this facility could imitate people. A cold wave of fear passed through me. Before I could continue reading, a noise came from behind me. A voice. Ethan. I spun around instantly. The room was empty. My flashlight swept across the darkness. Nothing. Then the voice came again. Ethan. This time it sounded like my father. My father had died 11 years earlier. I nearly dropped the flashlight. The voice emerged from the hallway outside. Perfectly identical. Same tone. Same calm manner of speaking. Exactly how I remembered him. "Ethan, come here." Every instinct screamed at me not to follow. The report had warned me. Ignore familiar voices. I backed away from the doorway. The voice continued, "Son, it's okay." My hands trembled. Hearing a dead loved one speak is a different kind of terror. Not because it's frightening. Because part of you wants to believe it. Part of you wants it to be real. That part almost got me killed. The voice slowly changed. The warmth disappeared. The words became distorted. The sound stretched unnaturally, as though multiple voices were speaking at once. "Ethan." The name echoed through the hallway. Then came laughter. Dozens of voices laughing together. I turned and ran. The sound followed me through the operations room. Not fast, not chasing, almost playful, like something enjoying itself. I reached another staircase at the far end of the level. A faded sign hung beside it. Level 5. Authorized access only. For several seconds I stared at the sign. Everything inside me said to leave. Instead, I descended. The staircase spiraled deeper than expected. Far deeper. Eventually I reached the bottom. The sight waiting there stopped me cold. Level 5 wasn't a normal floor. It was enormous. The ceiling disappeared into darkness above. Concrete walls stretched outward in every direction. The area looked less like a research facility and more like a gigantic underground cavern. Old observation platforms overlooked the space. Massive steel support structures crossed the chamber. And in the center stood something impossible. A hole. A perfectly circular shaft descending into complete darkness. The opening was at least 50 feet wide. Its edges were reinforced with metal. Ancient warning signs surrounded it. Most had faded beyond recognition. One remained readable. "Do not respond to the voices." My flashlight beam disappeared into the shaft. I couldn't see the bottom. The darkness seemed endless. Then I heard it. A whisper, very faint, coming from deep below. At first I couldn't understand the words. Then the whisper grew louder. More voices joined it. Men, women, children. Hundreds of voices rising from the darkness. All speaking together. All repeating the same sentence. "We are still here." The sound echoed through the cavern. I backed away from the shaft. My heart hammered against my ribs. This wasn't some animal. This wasn't machinery. The voices sounded human. Terrifyingly human. Then something moved far below. A shape, huge, slowly shifting beneath the darkness. I only caught a glimpse. A massive shadow passing across the bottom of the shaft. The voices stopped instantly. Silence returned. For several seconds nothing happened. Then every emergency light in level 5 switched on at once. Red light flooded the cavern. And for the first time, I noticed the writing covering the walls. Thousands of messages, scratched into concrete, written in paint, carved into metal. The same warning repeated over and over. "IT is listening." A loud metallic screech suddenly echoed through the chamber. The sound came from directly behind me. I turned. The staircase door had slammed shut, and somewhere beneath the shaft, something had begun climbing upward. The sound coming from the shaft didn't resemble footsteps. It was worse, much worse. Metal groaned somewhere below. Chains rattled. Concrete cracked. Something enormous was dragging itself upward through the darkness. I backed away from the edge. My flashlight shook violently in my hand. Every survival instinct told me to run. The problem was that there was nowhere to run. The only exit was the staircase behind me, and the door had sealed shut. The climbing sound continued. Slow, steady, deliberate. Whatever was below wasn't rushing. It didn't need to. A cold realization settled over me. It knew I was there. I hurried toward the staircase door and grabbed the handle. Locked. I threw my shoulder against it. Nothing. Again. Nothing. The steel didn't move an inch. Behind me, the noises from the shaft grew louder. Then they stopped. The sudden silence felt even worse. I slowly turned around. The red emergency lights still illuminated the cavern. The shaft remained dark. Completely dark. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then a voice echoed across level 5. "Help me." It was Lavra, the woman from the radio. Her voice sounded close now. Very close. I swept my flashlight across the observation platforms. "No one, please." The voice came again. This time from my left. I turned immediately. Still nothing. Then I noticed movement near one of the distant walkways. A human figure. A woman, standing beneath the red lights. My heart nearly stopped. She looked real. Completely real. Dark hair. Gray jacket. Thin face. She appeared exhausted. Terrified. She raised a trembling hand. "Please help me." I hesitated. The reports. The warnings. The mimicry. Everything I had read told me not to trust what I was seeing. Yet she looked so human. So convincing. The woman took a step forward. Then another. I noticed something strange. Her movements weren't natural. They seemed slightly delayed. as if she were copying human behavior instead of actually living it. The realization hit me immediately. She wasn't walking. She was learning how to walk. The woman smiled, a wide smile, far too wide. Then her face changed, not gradually. Instantly, one moment she looked human. The next, every feature shifted. Eyes moved, skin stretched, bones appeared to rearrange beneath her face. I stumbled backward. The thing standing on the walkway tilted its head. Then it spoke again, this time using my own voice. "Ethan." The creature took another step. The red lights flickered. For a fraction of a second, its disguise vanished completely. I saw something impossible. A tall shape covered in pale gray skin, limbs far too long, a body twisted into proportions that didn't belong to any living animal. Then the lights stabilized. The human appearance returned. The creature smiled again. I ran. I sprinted across the cavern as fast as I could. The thing didn't chase me, at least not physically. Instead, voices exploded throughout level 5. Hundreds of them. My father, my mother, old friends, people I hadn't spoken to in years. Every voice came from a different direction. Every voice sounded real. Some begged for help. Some screamed. Some cried. Others laughed. The noise became unbearable. I covered my ears and kept moving. Ahead, I spotted another corridor branching away from the main chamber. I rushed toward it. The hallway led to a series of observation rooms overlooking the shaft. Most were abandoned. One still contained functioning equipment. Several computer screens glowed softly in the darkness. I entered and locked the door behind me. For the first time in several minutes, the voices faded. The room was silent. Breathing heavily, I approached the nearest monitor. Security camera footage filled the screen. Multiple camera angles displayed different sections of level 5. Most showed empty corridors. One camera pointed directly into the shaft. I froze. The footage revealed something my flashlight never could. The hole wasn't natural. It had been excavated, artificially. Gigantic support structures extended downward for hundreds of feet. The shaft resembled a mine, or a prison built around something. Then movement appeared on the screen. My stomach dropped. The creature was climbing the interior wall, not using ladders, not using platforms, climbing directly on the concrete, like an insect. It moved with horrifying speed. Its limbs stretched impossibly far. Its body twisted around support beams. Every few seconds its appearance changed. One moment it looked like a woman, then a man, then a child, then someone else entirely. Faces appeared and vanished constantly. Thousands of identities passing across a single body. I watched in horror. Then another camera activated automatically. A document appeared on one of the monitors, apparently triggered by motion sensors. The file was labeled Final Containment Report. I opened it. The report explained everything, or at least part of it. In 1983, researchers working beneath Black Mesa discovered unusual acoustic phenomena deep underground. At first they believed it was a geological anomaly. Then workers began hearing voices. The voices sounded familiar. Dead relatives, friends, co-workers. The deeper excavation teams traveled, the stronger the phenomenon became. Eventually several workers disappeared. Search teams found no bodies, only recordings, thousands of recordings. The voices on those recordings belonged to people who were not present. Some belonged to people who had been dead for decades. Then came the final entry. Subject appears capable of absorbing and reproducing human memory through auditory exposure. Intelligence level unknown. Origin unknown. Containment status failed. I felt sick. Failed. That word stood out immediately. Failed. If containment had failed, why was the facility still standing? Why hadn't anyone warned the public? Why was the site merely abandoned? Then another line answered the question. Subject remains below extraction depth. Activity increases whenever personnel approach the shaft. A loud bang echoed outside the room. The door shook violently. I jumped. Another impact followed. Much harder. Something was trying to get inside. Then my own voice came from the other side. Perfectly calm. Perfectly human. Ethan, open the door. The handle slowly began to turn. The handle turned slowly. Once, twice, then stopped. I stood frozen on the opposite side of the room. My flashlight remained fixed on the door. The voice spoke again. Ethan, it's me. My own voice. Perfectly replicated. Every syllable sounded authentic. For a terrifying moment, I caught myself wanting to answer. That was the creature's real danger. It wasn't its strength. It wasn't its appearance. It was how convincing it could be. The reports had warned about mimicry. What they hadn't explained was how deeply it could get inside your head. A heavy impact slammed against the door. The entire frame shook. Another followed. Then silence. I waited. Nothing happened. After nearly a minute, I cautiously stepped toward one of the monitors. The security cameras were still active. I switched between different feeds. Most showed empty hallways. Then I found the camera outside my room. My blood ran cold. The corridor was empty. Completely empty. Nothing stood outside the door. No person, no creature, no movement. Yet seconds earlier, something had been speaking right outside. I backed away from the monitor. The room suddenly felt much smaller. Then another screen flickered to life by itself. Static filled the display. A video file opened automatically. The timestamp read, November 3, 1985. The footage showed a group of researchers gathered inside Level 5. There were 6 of them. They looked exhausted, terrified. One man spoke directly toward the camera. If anyone finds this recording, do not trust the voices. Behind him, several workers were sealing equipment into crates. The man continued, we thought it was an organism. He glanced nervously towards something off camera. We were wrong. The recording crackled. For several seconds the image distorted. Then he spoke again. What we found isn't alive the way we understand life. The room behind him suddenly erupted into shouting. The camera shifted. Someone was pointing toward the shaft. Several researchers began backing away. One woman started crying. The man looked toward the disturbance. Fear flooded his face. Then he said something that made my stomach tighten. It learns from us. The video abruptly ended. Static filled the screen. I replayed the final sentence several times. It learns from us. Not feeds. Not hunts. Learns. A chill ran through my body. The creature wasn't merely copying voices. It was studying people. Absorbing them. Becoming them. Then another realization hit me. The voice that had contacted me on the radio. The version of me that kept warning me. What if that wasn't the creature? What if it was someone else? The room suddenly shook. A deep vibration rolled through the floor. Dust fell from the ceiling. Then came a distant sound. A metallic alarm. Somewhere deeper within the facility. I turned toward another terminal. A map had appeared on screen. Large sections of Level 5 were highlighted in red. One area blinked repeatedly. At the bottom of the display, a message appeared. Containment breach detected. Emergency seal protocol initiated. My heart skipped a beat. A second message followed. All exits will close in 27 minutes. I stared at the countdown. 27 minutes. If the system sealed completely, I would be trapped underground. Maybe forever. I grabbed my equipment and rushed out of the room. The hallway beyond was empty. At least for now. The alarm continued echoing through Level 5. Red lights flashed overhead. The countdown clock appeared on monitors throughout the corridor. 26 to 12, 26 to 11, 26 to 10. I ran toward the staircase leading upward. Halfway there, I heard a voice. Not behind me, not ahead. Inside my earpiece radio. A burst of static crackled. Then my own voice spoke. Ethan, listen carefully. I nearly stopped running. The voice sounded urgent, desperate. You're looking in the wrong place. What? I whispered. Static answered. Then the voice returned. The thing below isn't the only prisoner. I froze. The corridor around me remained empty. What are you talking about? Several seconds passed. Then the reply came. Level 4. Observation archive. The signal weakened. Hurry. The transmission vanished. I stood motionless. Every second mattered. Part of me wanted to escape immediately, but another part knew something wasn't right. The facility had spent decades containing whatever existed below. Yet the reports felt incomplete, like someone had intentionally hidden the truth. The voice on the radio had been helping me from the beginning. If it was a trap, it was an incredibly strange one. I changed direction and headed toward Level 4. The countdown continued. 24:38, 24:37, 24:36. Within minutes I reached the operations area again. The archive room wasn't difficult to find. A heavy steel door marked Observation Archive stood near the rear section of the level. Unlike everything else underground, this door was unlocked. I pushed it open. Rows of filing cabinets stretched into darkness. Thousands of records. Thousands of photographs. Thousands of videotapes. At the center of the room sat a single projector screen, and someone had already left it running. A photograph filled the screen. The image showed a research team standing beside the shaft in 1985. I immediately recognized one of the faces. My breath caught in my throat. It was me, not someone similar, not someone who resembled me. It was my face, my exact face, standing among the researchers 42 years before I was born. And beneath the photograph was a handwritten caption, Subject Observation Team, June 1985. The countdown clock continued ticking somewhere behind me, but in that moment, I barely noticed, because for the first time since arriving at Black Mesa, I felt something worse than fear. I felt confusion, and I had a terrible feeling the answers waiting in that archive were about to change everything. I stared at the photograph for what felt like an eternity. The man standing among the researchers had my face, not a similar face, not a distant resemblance. My face, the same eyes, the same jawline, the same scar above my right eyebrow that I had received during a bicycle accident when I was 12. That scar alone made the photograph impossible. The image had supposedly been taken in 1985, 22 years before I arrived at Black Mesa. My hands trembled as I searched through nearby files. Most were organized by date. Others were labeled with warning classifications. Then I found a folder resting on the projector table. Unlike the others, it had only one word written across the front. Mercer, my last name. I opened it. Inside were dozens of photographs. Every picture showed me, at different ages, different years, different locations. One photograph showed me graduating high school. Another showed me working on a radio tower in Arizona. Another showed me standing beside my truck only months earlier. Someone had been watching me for years. My stomach twisted. At the bottom of the folder lay a cassette recording. Beside it sat an old player. A handwritten note had been attached. For Ethan only. I hesitated, then pressed play. Static crackled through the speaker. A man's voice emerged. Older, exhausted, but unmistakably mine. You're finally here. I couldn't breathe. The voice continued. If you're listening to this, then the containment system has already begun failing. The recording paused briefly. Then the voice spoke again. I know you're confused. I was too. Every word felt like a punch to the chest. The voice wasn't mimicking me. It was me. Or at least it sounded exactly like me. You need to understand something before it's too late. The thing beneath Black Mesa doesn't simply copy people. The recording crackled. It copies possibilities. A chill ran through my body. I know that sounds impossible. I thought so too. The voice sighed. Then continued. During the excavation, researchers discovered something buried far below the mesa. We never understood what it was. We only understood what it could do. I listened in complete silence. It learns from human minds. It studies memories. It studies choices. The voice lowered. Eventually we discovered it wasn't predicting the future. My pulse quickened. It was creating them. The room suddenly felt colder. Much colder. The voice continued. Every time someone entered the facility, it generated countless versions of that person. Different outcomes, different paths, different lives. I stared at the player, unable to look away. The reason you keep hearing your own voice is because those voices are real. My heart pounded. The voice took a shaky breath. They're versions of you. The recording crackled violently. Then came the sentence that changed everything. And I'm one of them. Silence followed. For several seconds I couldn't move. The older voice returned. Most versions never survive. The words echoed in my mind. Most versions never survive. The recording continued. Some discover the truth too late. Some reach the shaft. Some never leave level 5. A loud metallic boom suddenly echoed through the archive room. The building shook. Dust rained from the ceiling. The countdown clock flashed on a nearby monitor. 11:52, 11:51, 11:50. Less than 12 minutes remained. The voice on the recording spoke faster now. Listen carefully. The creature isn't trying to escape. I froze. The creature has never wanted to escape. A horrible realization began forming inside my mind. The voice continued. It wants people to come here. My stomach dropped. Every person who enters becomes another source of memories, another life to study. The lights flickered. The alarm grew louder. The voice lowered to a whisper. The facility isn't a prison. My entire body tensed. It never was. Another boom shook the archive. The voice finished the sentence. It's bait. Silence filled the room. Then the recording ended. I stood frozen. Everything suddenly made sense. The radio signals. The voices. The strange job offer. The contractor. The unusually high pay. Someone wanted people to keep coming here. Not to investigate. To feed information to whatever existed below. A nearby monitor suddenly switched on. Static filled the screen. Then an image appeared. A live camera feed from level 5. The shaft. I moved closer. And immediately wished I hadn't. The creature had reached the surface. It stood beside the shaft under the red emergency lights. Its appearance shifted constantly. Hundreds of faces flowed across its body. Men, women, children, people from different eras, different decades, different lives. Then the shifting stopped. One face remained. Mine. The creature looked directly into the camera and smiled. The monitor speakers activated automatically. My own voice filled the room. Almost out of time, Ethan. The countdown reached 10 o'clock. Then every screen in the archive displayed the same message. Containment seal in 10 minutes. The creature's smile widened, and somewhere deep beneath the facility, something even larger began to move. The entire facility trembled. At first, I thought it was another containment failure. Then the shaking became stronger, much stronger. Filing cabinets toppled over, glass shattered, ceiling panels crashed onto the floor. Whatever was moving beneath the facility dwarfed everything I had encountered so far, and for the first time, I realized a terrifying possibility. The creature I had seen wasn't the thing being contained. It was only part of it. The countdown clock flashed across every monitor. 9:12, 9:11, 9:10. I ran from the archive room and sprinted toward the staircase. The alarms were deafening now. Red emergency lights painted the corridors in a blood-colored glow. As I reached the main operations room, the radio clipped to my belt crackled. Then the older version of my voice returned. "Ethan." I grabbed the radio immediately. "What do I do?" Static hissed. Then came the answer. "You need to leave, right now." "What's moving down there?" Several seconds passed. When the voice finally answered, it sounded defeated. I never found out. The response chilled me more than anything else. If this version of me knew so much, then whatever was beneath Black Mesa had frightened even him. I ran harder. The countdown dropped below 8 minutes. As I reached the staircase connecting level 4 and level 3, every light suddenly went dark. Complete darkness swallowed the facility. For a moment, the only sound was my own breathing. Then came the voices, hundreds of them, everywhere, inside the walls, inside the ceilings, inside the darkness itself. Some begged, some screamed, some laughed, others whispered my name. I switched on my flashlight and continued upward. The beam shook violently. The voices followed. "Ethan, Ethan, Ethan." The sound surrounded me. Then one voice broke through the others. A young boy, terrified. "Don't let it see you." The warning was immediately followed by a woman's scream. Then silence, absolute silence. The sudden quiet felt unnatural. I reached level 2. The staircase above remained open. Hope surged through me. Maybe I could still make it out. Then I heard footsteps. Slow, heavy, behind me. The same footsteps from my dream. I turned. My flashlight illuminated the staircase below. Nothing. The footsteps stopped. I waited. Silence. Then a shadow moved across the wall. Far too large to belong to a human. I ran. The countdown dropped below 5 minutes. The main access corridor finally appeared ahead. The steel door leading to the surface remained open. Relief flooded through me. I raced toward it. Halfway there, I noticed someone standing beside the exit. A man. He looked familiar. Very familiar. As I got closer, my blood ran cold. It was me, the older version. The same face from the recordings. The same face from the photograph. He stood motionless near the door. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he smiled subtly. I was wondering which version would make it this far. My heart pounded. "You are real." He nodded. "Real enough." The building shook again. Dust rained from the ceiling. I glanced toward the door, then back at him. "Come with me." His smile faded. "I can't." "Why not?" The answer came quietly. "Because I already tried." Before I could ask another question, a low roar echoed through the underground levels. Every light flickered. The older Ethan looked toward the darkness below. Fear crossed his face. The first genuine fear I had seen from him. "It's awake." The same words from the radio. The same warning from the beginning. I looked toward the staircase. Something massive was coming. Not the mimic. Something else. Something far larger. The darkness itself seemed to shift as it climbed upward. The older Ethan stepped back. "Go." The countdown displayed. 1:47. I hesitated. He shook his head. "None of us ever make the same choice." Then he pushed me toward the exit. I stumbled through the doorway and sprinted up the final staircase. Cold desert air hit my face. I burst from the underground entrance just as emergency sirens reached a deafening pitch. Behind me, deep beneath Black Mesa, something roared. The sound didn't resemble any animal. It sounded like thousands of voices speaking at once. The ground trembled. I ran across the facility toward my truck. The countdown reached 0:22. I threw myself into the driver's seat. The engine started immediately. For the first time in my life, I was grateful for pure luck. I slammed the accelerator. The truck shot across the desert road. Behind me, the facility disappeared into darkness. Then the countdown reached 0. A blinding flash erupted from Black Mesa. The ground shook violently. A deep thunderous boom rolled across the desert. In my rearview mirror, the entire monitoring station collapsed inward. Concrete structures vanished beneath clouds of dust. The underground levels sealed forever. Or so I thought. 3 days later, I returned to Albuquerque. I told nobody what had happened. Nobody would have believed me anyway. Official reports claimed the facility had been demolished due to structural instability. The contractor who hired me no longer existed. Every phone number was disconnected. Every email account had vanished. It was as if the job had never happened. For months, I tried convincing myself it was over. Then one night, while repairing a communications relay outside Santa Fe, I heard something through my headset. A familiar voice. My own voice. Calm, quiet, almost amused. "Ethan." I froze. The voice continued. "You chose the desert this time." Static crackled. Then came one final sentence. A sentence that still keeps me awake at night. "Let's see what happens next time." The transmission ended. I never heard it again. But sometimes, when I wake in the middle of the night, I find myself wondering how many versions of me are still down there beneath Black Mesa, and whether one of them is still trying to warn me. Have you ever experienced something unexplainable? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe for more terrifying tales.